our break. I hope you guys had a chance to get some water or coffee or...
How much coffee did you have?
Yeah.
We're drinking lots of coffee.
You can listen to Teresa. She speeds up the more coffee she has.
It's true. Okay, well, we're going to pick this back up again, and I want to go into a kind of an interesting area on this. I want to talk about the earthquake that swallowed up Korah and all the people who were rebelling. Korah and the other two guys.
Dayton and Abiram.
Thank you. Because the earthquake is actually really important. All right, so first of all, let's take a look at it. Let's find where the earthquake is. Verse 31, still in that number 16. The moment he finished speaking, the ground under them split apart. The earth opened its mouth and swallowed them up with their households, all the people who had sided with Korah, and everything they owned. So they and everything they owned went down alive into Sheol. The earth closed over them, and their existence in the community ceased. All Israel around them fled at their shrieks, shouting, "The earth might swallow us too." Then fire came out from Adonai and destroyed the 250 men who had offered the incense. So it's two things that are happening right here. One of them is the earthquake. The earth opened up and swallowed them, and then fire came out and destroyed the 250 who were encroaching on the holy things of God. Now the word for split is bakah. So the earth bakah, it's split apart. And bakah, Adina was talking about this in her teaching last night, it has the implication in a sense of redemption. So things that split apart, the earth split apart here, the Red Sea split apart and allowed the people to go through. So it's an idea of redemption. But one of the other places that the earth splits apart is in the book of Zechariah in chapter 14, where it says that the Lord Adonai will come and he will split the Mount of Olives, and the people will run through. So we're going to look at that connection there as to this earthquake swallowing up, in the earthquake in Zechariah and the book of Revelation, because we see a lot of earthquakes in Revelation as well. Right. So the next thing about this is that the ground split apart and swallowed them. You'll see on the slide. They became a sign, okay, a nes. This became, the word is a nes or nisi, and you'll recognize the Lord our banner, the Lord Jehovah Nisi. Remember that?
Yes.
There was a song about Jehovah Nisi, our Lord our banner. Well, a nisi, the root word is nes, and it means a sign, a banner. It means a signal, a standard. So it's like lifting up a standard or something like a flag that's waving. It's to get your attention, basically. This is what this is. So it's a nes. So in Numbers 26, you could say the earth opened its mouth and swallowed them up along with Korah when that company died, when the fire devoured 250 men, so that they became a sign. And this is from Numbers 26. So this is the first, not the first time the word nes is used. The first time nes is used is for the golden snake being lifted up as a nes, as a nisi.
Okay.
But the first people that became a sign were the people swallowed up here in the story of Korah.
So let's be accurate about exactly what happened. So what happened was earth opened its mouth, swallowed them, which is Dayton and Abiram, probably their kids and their tents and all that stuff, swallowed them with their households, all the people who'd sided with Korah, and everything they owned. So it was Dayton, Abiram, kids, households, people who'd sided with Korah, everything they owned, and the 250 guys doesn't say they got swallowed. It just says the fire came out and destroyed them. They offered fire, they got destroyed with fire. Same sort of thing. You rebelled, you got earth opened up and you got swallowed. You offered fire.
That was encroachment.
But it was just them. It doesn't say anything about their families or them being swallowed or anything. So let's just make sure we get a clear picture of who got swallowed and who got burned up.
Right. Well, and in Numbers 26:11, it says the line of Korah, however, did not die out.
Right.
And they were the ones that wrote the Psalms.
Right.
Some of the Psalms. So we know that that whole lineage didn't get swallowed up.
Right. And if you notice again in that one spot in Numbers 26, they became, it's called a warning sign, nes or nesi. It's a warning sign. It's a banner. Okay? So keep that in mind because we're going to make some connections here. And then actually a plague of fire was released, because that's the other thing that it looked at as a plague of fire. So oftentimes plagues are released as a sickness, the plague of snakes, the plague of fire. You think of the 7 trumpets releasing plagues. Their plague in the Hebrew has more of the idea of not a disease, like we think about the plague of, you know, the Black Death. Ebola, stuff like that. But no, it can be any kind of an attack.
Well, it was like the flies and the locusts, and it was a outside attack, not necessarily a personal disease.
And this a plague of fire could be a plague of fire. That could be a plague as well. So anyway, so that those 2 things. Well, let's take a look at the earthquake as a sign. So let's go over to Revelation. Put your place here in Numbers 16, and we're going to go to Revelation 6 and 7. And as always, these are my insights. Okay, so understanding that there is the clear meaning of the text. And studying, whenever you study the Hebrew text, you have the clear meaning of it, and then you have the remez, which is kind of a remez. Just kind of, you can bring understandings and connections, and then there's the midrash, where you talk about it and big allusions and make teachings out of it. And then there's the sod level, which is kind of the secret or hidden meaning, which a lot of prophecy. Understanding prophetic things is at the sod level. So that's kind of where we're going right now. So I don't want anybody to think that I'm saying this has to be like this. These are some of my insights that I see at the sod or prophetic level. Okay?
And just so you all know, the way it works out is that every morning, Teresa and I study, so at breakfast every morning, we'll study when we drive, wherever we're going, all the places we go. In the car, we talk about it. And so these concepts that come into Teresa's head, we test. And I play the role of the audience and go, what about this? What about that? What about this? And then we go through it. So by the time we get here and we start sharing it with our friends, we've already been over it, and at least it's enough so that we will put it out. We'll take some ownership for it. We'll put it out as a possibility, but please, as Rico says, test us. As Steve Motrius says, 119, test everything. So, tell you what, this is... take this is good stuff, but we'd love to hear from some of you and tell us from your studies what you find.
So, okay, Revelation 6 and 7, we're not going to read the whole thing. We're just going to pick out some major events. So, Revelation 6 is the opening of the seals. So we have the 4 writers writing, which, as you've seen in the book of my Revelation, horses, the story of my teaching on the horses. That coffee's getting to me.
Here comes the coffee.
I'm going for coffee. I've talked about that as Islam, the worldwide jihad being released on the earth. Right after that, now we get to verse 12, and I broke the 6th seal, and there was a great earthquake. Now the word great is the word mega, which means like significant. It's a significant earthquake. So it means this earthquake has great significance in the sense that we will know something about it. It's significant. Those of us who study Torah will go, oh, that earthquake is really important for some reason. It's not that it's a giant earthquake. It's a different word in the Greek. But a mega earthquake is a significant earthquake. So what happens, everything turns, the sun turns black, the moon becomes blood red, the trees drop, and then I'm not going to go into all that. And then all the rulers hide themselves and say to the mountains and rocks, fall on us and hide us. So that's the result of this earthquake. But the earthquake's the important thing. The next event that happens is in chapter 7. The 4 angels standing at the 4 corners of the earth, holding back the 4 winds. Now the 4 winds, their job is to go into the 4 corners of the earth to gather the 12 tribes back into the land. That's the job of the 4 winds. You see that over and over again in the prophetic books. And it's not some strange mystical thing. Don't try to make up what the 4 winds are supposed to do. The 4 winds, their job is to go out and gather all the tribes from out of the nations back to the land for the end of days.
So we're talking about out of the diaspora, out of where they've been for thousands of years now, bring them back and actually bring people back into the land.
Right. Before the winds are released, however, the 144,000 are set up. And again, I don't have time to go into this meaning of this. I think I'll do a teaching on this later. But this is 12,000 from each tribe. And this is very similar to the description in the 1st and 2nd Kings, 1st and 2nd Chronicles, in the books in Torah, as well as setting of military leaders. It's a leadership structure that's being set up here. And you see that as a repetitive thing in Torah and in the writings. Leadership structure, we just saw the numbering of the leadership of the clans. So again, anytime you have numbering like this, it's a leadership structure. So you have leadership structure. Right after that, the four winds are released. And you see a multitude of people down here in verse 9, a huge crowd, too large for anyone to count, from every nation, tribe, people, and language. That's the ingathering. People have been gathered in from four corners of the earth. Right after that, the final war begins. Now, when you look at this event, you see on the slide we have, number 1, a large earthquake. Number 2, the establishment of the 12,000 from all 12 tribes. Number 3, the four winds are released. And number 4, the final war begins. Where can we see this same pattern? And this is Isaiah 11:12, where it says in 11:12, number 1, he hoists a banner, a nesi, or a nes, for all the goyim. It's some kind of a flag that says, look at this, look at this. This is an important, significant event. Number 2, he assembles the dispersed of Israel. Number 3, he gathers the scattered from the four corners of the earth. And number 4, the final war begins. It's the same pattern. So, we're going to look at this, the first event in 11:12 is he hoists a banner, or a nes, for the goyim. That's where we connect what is the first event that was a nes or a nesi. What is the nes of Isaiah? It's an earthquake, the earthquake. They became a nes, a standard, an ensign, a signal, a sign. Go back to Numbers 26 that we just talked about. The earth opened its mouth and swallowed them up along with Korah when that company died, when they devoured 250 men, so that they became a nesi, a sign. The first sign that was established in the Torah was this earthquake of Korah. All right?
So we got Numbers 17, we got Numbers 26, we got Zechariah 14, we got Isaiah 11, and we got Revelation 7. All
These
related.
are all connected, right?
So that's again one more time. That's Leviticus 17, Leviticus 26, Isaiah 11, Zechariah 14, Revelation 7, all connected things.
We're going to look at Zechariah 14 right now. The earthquake as a sign. Remember, this is the topic, earthquake as a sign. So Zechariah 14, let's go ahead and turn to that. Aren't you glad you guys have your Bibles?
Exactly.
Now, Zechariah 14 is interesting because most people put this at the end of the Gog-Magog war and the return of Yeshua when he stops the war and Jesus comes down, his foot hits the Mount of Olives, the mountain splits, and then that ends everything and he reigns as King of Lords and Lord of Lords. That's what everybody says about this event. However, if we read it, that's not what it says. Let's take a look at it. Let's see, so we are going to start Zechariah 14. I'm going to just start.
Let's just stop for a second and say, we're learning with our language. So let's not say that's not what it says. Let's say another interpretation is, and we're going to let you make your own interpretation. Okay?
Very diplomatic of you.
I'm a city planner, stand in front of a lot of boards, don't want the public yelling at me.
Yeah.
Okay, so we put this in context. What has just happened? Jerusalem has been divided in the beginning of Zechariah. All the nations are gathered in for war against Jerusalem. The city's taken, the houses are rifled, the women will be raped. Half the city will go into exile. And that's the division of Jerusalem, which we're seeing being planned out right now by the United Nations. They're planning on dividing Jerusalem and giving half to the Palestinians. When that happens, they will push all the Jews out. They'll make it Judenrein, which means no Jews in that part of the city. And the women will be raped, the houses will be rifled, the city will be destroyed, half the city will go into exile. That will happen if they ever create a half or divide up Jerusalem and give it to the Palestinians. And then Adonai will go out and fight against those nations. Fighting is on a day of battle. So then it says, on that day, his feet will stand on the Mount of Olives. The term on that day is a prophetic term. It's a Hebrew idiom. So it doesn't mean that specific day. It means in that day and at that time. It's a Hebrew idiom for the end of days. So in Jewish teaching, the millennial reign starts at, say, 7,000, right? And the first part of the millennial reign is chaos and war.
You mean 6,000?
6,000.
Yeah, 6,000.
No.
Yeah,
6,000.
6 to
yes,
7.
thank
yeah.
you, 6, yeah, thank you.
She's not a math person.
Not a math person. So 6,000 AD, if you want to say it that way, okay? Or the 6,000 in the Jewish calendar. And the first part of that is all chaos. When the Messiah has to come and
4,000.
fight against their enemies.
2000 AD. 6,000. That's good, because we said, let's just try to keep them straight. 2000 AD.
6,000.
6,000, the 6,000th year. Okay, there we go.
Yeah, on the creation calendar.
Right.
Yeah,
Say it that way. And it begins with chaos.
right.
The actual reign of Yeshua doesn't happen, the reign of the Messiah doesn't happen until after the chaos is put under control and he comes and stops it with a war. In Christian thinking, you have the war first and then Jesus comes, stops it, and then the millennium starts. It's opposite.
It's opposite.
It's opposite in Jewish thinking, or Jewish teaching.
Is this related at all? We don't want to get into it now, but is this related at all for some other study when the Mount of Olives splits? Is it Ezekiel 38, 39, I can't remember, whatever it is, where the water comes out from under the throne? And when the water comes out and it flows, it's got to get out of Jerusalem and go east somehow. And we're looking at it going through this split in the Mount of Olives, running down and hitting the Jordan, and then moving on down to the south. So is that related at all?
It probably is. I think it is related.
Let's talk
But
about
there's
that
no way to
sometime in the
connect that.
future. Let's
Yeah.
talk about that sometime in the future. Okay.
Yeah, I don't have a connection for that now. But to go back and look to see what this says, this is verse 4. And then this is the key verse that we always look up. On that day, which remember a Jewish idiom for the end of days, his feet will stand on the Mount of Olives, which lies to the east of Jerusalem, and the Mount of Olives will be split in half from east to west to make a huge valley. Now I'm going to bring out that word split is the same word, baka, that was in the split of Korah, the land of Korah. It's the same word, okay? Half of the mountain will move toward the north and half of it toward the south. Does it say that the war will end? Does it say that Jesus will reign as King and Lord of Lords? No, more stuff is happening. So the mountain splits. Then you will flee, the Jewish people living in that area, you will flee to the valley in the mountains. So apparently this mountain splits, creates a huge valley, and they flee through that valley. For the valley and the mountains will reach to Atzel. And Atzel is both a place and a person. Atzel, often, they're not quite sure where ancient Atzel is. They think it was right around the area of Ammon, Jordan. That's one likely possibility. But Atzel was also a person. He was the son of Jonathan,
Right.
the son of Saul. So Jonathan, if you look at Saul, Saul is of the tribe of Benjamin that wants to be king. Jonathan is the son of Saul, the tribe of Benjamin that wants to be king, that's in covenant with David, who's a type of the Messiah. So Atzel represents those Benjamites who have come in a covenant with Yeshua,
Okay.
like a Messianic Jew. Someone, actually Judah, who believes in Yeshua as Messiah. So that's what that would imply. So it will reach to Atzel, you will flee just as you fled before the earthquake in the days of Uzziah, king of Judah. Then Adonai my God will come to you with all the holy ones. And then on that day, we'll scoop down to verse 8, this is where you got this, Scott. On that day, fresh water will flow out from Jerusalem, half toward the eastern sea and half toward the western sea, both summer and winter. Then Adonai will be king over the whole world. So there's still things that have to happen. So what this says is that Adonai will split that mountain. And I may, when I put this up, I may actually put a map on, because I went out and looked to see what would happen, what would get split in this mountain, okay? And it actually is the Palestinian area. And the valley would go all the way out to Ammon, Jordan in that direction.
Okay.
So this actually fits in with the geography as well. So,
Yeah, there's the Kidron Valley. Sort of, I do the land thing because of what I do for work, and it's possible there's a split that goes down to it could come out to the Kidron, and I'm still early on, so don't take it as gospel, but then it goes down the Jordan Valley, then it runs down the Jordan. We know in Ezekiel 47 that then the Jordan becomes fresh water. As many fish there as in the Great Seas and the Mediterranean Sea, and then it flows on down. Looks like, I think, if it flows all the way to the Eastern Sea, I'm still working on it, but the Eastern Sea probably is not the Dead Sea. The Eastern Sea is actually the Red Sea, so it looks like we got water coming down out of Jerusalem down to the Red Sea, and also somehow The Western Sea, I'm going to assume that's, without having studied it, this is dangerous, that would be toward the Mediterranean. But, and we haven't worked that one out yet, but what it does is it provides water coming from Jerusalem to the Western world, which takes it, all the way, into the Mediterranean Sea, and then it can work its way out and into the Red Sea, so it goes east. So east and west both, everybody's impacted by it.
Right. So let's summarize on this slide here. Zechariah 14, number 1, all the nations are gathered against Jerusalem. Number 2, encroachment, the exact same thing that happened with Korah. The land is divided, the people are exiled. Possibly, I want to put in here the defilement of the temple with the abomination of desolation. That's part of encroachment, so that's possible that may be happening at the same time. Just an aside. Number 3, then Adonai will go out to battle. Number 4, his feet will split the Mount of Olives in an earthquake. The same earthquake, that's the same type of earthquake as we see in Korah. It creates a huge valley swallowing up the enemies of Israel. That is the Nasi, that is a sign to the Goyim. That same sign we talked about, the significant earthquake of Revelation. Number 6, the people will flee through this valley to Atzel, which we believe may be a place, and also the Jewish people who have come into covenant with Messiah. Number 7, then Adonai will come with all the holy ones, which basically the holy ones would be an army of the Lord, right? Number 8, he will strike his enemies with a plague of fire, because if you read on in Zechariah, the plague of fire hits as well. The exact same things that happened with the earthquake of Korah. The earth opened up, the enemies of Israel swallowed in, then the plague of fire came out, and that was because of encroachment. So we see a parallel on these. Only after these events will the kingdom be established.
Right.
So my theory is that the Nisi, the sign in Isaiah 11 that signals to the world that Messiah is coming and to be gathered, is the splitting of the Mount of Olives. It happens at the beginning of everything and not at the end. I think if we put that in right there in that timeline, and a lot of other things will fall into place. So, anyway, that's kind of where I've gone with that one. Yeah.
One question in verse 9, I don't want to get too far off track, but it says, then Adonai will be king. Do you think that's then, like immediately then, or that's opening that doorway for his kingship to eventually come to be? You think the next day he's king?
Well, is this speaking of his coronation? When does the coronation happen?
That's an interesting point.
This is Midrash, okay? Midrash.
An interesting point, because think of the ministry of David and the life of David. He became king while he was still out in the desert. So first Samuel anointed him to be the next king, anointed him as king, because Saul was no longer faithful. He spent 7 years gathering the malcontents in the desert, in the wilderness. And then he becomes king and he's in Hebron. He's not coronated or crowned as king over all the 12 tribes until they go into Jerusalem.
Right.
So yeah, it could mean the same kind of thing. That's why you have to look at all of Torah. You can't just take one scripture. Yeah. A lot of things could happen in the middle of all this. So that's a good way to look at it. Okay, I hope that's interesting.
Yeah, it is very interesting.
Cool. All right, let's switch back over to Numbers. And we're going to finish out this little bit about encroachment and the earthquake. Because what this does now, this shows the people that they are not to encroach on the holy things of God. It was a message for them, it's a message for us in these times as well. God has established the Levites, and specifically the descendants of Aaron, to minister in the tabernacle, and eventually in the temple, and eventually in the millennial temple as well. So that's been established. But he still has to deal with the authority. So then we get into the rod of Aaron. This is the next part of it, it's the rod of Aaron. One thing I'm going to bring out here is chapter 17, verse 5. In some Bibles it's 16, verse 40. They took the fire pans and beat them as a cover for the altar to remind the people of Israel that an ordinary person, not descended from Aaron, is not to approach and burn incense before Adonai if he wants to avoid the fate of Korah and his group. So we have to keep that in mind. We don't want to take the job that isn't ours.
Right.
Right.
But on the other hand, and I can't remember where it is right now, where the prayers of the saints are like incense that comes
Yeah,
up before
they
the
do,
Father.
yes.
On the other hand, spiritually speaking, we have access. Physically speaking, probably not a good idea.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, you want to be a priest and offer incense, pray.
Right, exactly. Yes.
Now, we're going to go on up to a little bit here. We're going to talk about the rod of Aaron, which is so cool. It's Aaron's rod that budded. That's like one of my favorite stories. It's Aaron's rod that budded. So we go up and we say, speak to the people of Israel. Okay, we're on chapter 17, verse 1. Adonai said to Moshe, speak to the people of Israel and take from them staffs, one for each ancestral tribe, from each leader of a
We're
tribe.
on 17:21.
Are we?
Yes. Moshe spoke to the people of Israel. All leaders give their staffs?
Well, yeah, I guess it depends on what verse, what
What
Bible.
version?
Oh, I'm sorry, that's
Yeah.
17:6 or,
See, yeah, it's 17:1 in this Bible.
Is it?
okay.
17:1?
Well, 17:6 says it starts out the same thing, that they speak to them. So
Well, whatever Bible you have.
12, it says it repeats. Verse
Okay.
6 sort of repeats. The first.
Okay. So basically, they're going to take a tribe, let's see, take from each them staffs. One for each ancestral tribe, from each leader of a tribe, 12 staffs. Write each man's name on a staff, and write Aaron's name on the staff of Levi. For each tribe's leader is to have one staff. Put them in the tent of meeting in front of the testimony where I would meet with you.
So Aaron represented the tribe of Levi.
Yeah. The staff of the man I'm going to choose will sprout buds. In this way, I'll put a stop to the complaints the people of Israel keep making against you. So there's determining whether or not the tribe of Levi and Aaron both have authority. So the idea of a staff or a rod. See, I think, did I have the Hebrew on that? Let me see. I thought I looked up the Hebrew. It's a mateh? I didn't write down the, oh, there it is, on my slide. So look at this slide. Here, I'll have the slides up. This is slide number 10. Aaron's staff for the house of Levi had budded. And you'll see that when he pulled them all out, none of the other staffs had anything. But his had flowers and ripe almonds. It's kind of cool.
Yeah.
I always like that story. So in Hebrew, it's a mateh or a matah. It means a staff, a rod, a shaft, a branch. It also could mean a tribe. So that word can mean a tribe as well. So in a sense, the rod represents the tribe. It's a rod of authority. It's a rod, the same type of rod that Moses used when he was like threw down, turned into a snake, and he split the Red Sea. It's a different word than when they say that Messiah will come and rule them with the rod of iron.
Okay.
Different
that's a
word.
different word.
Yeah. So this is the staff of authority and power, in a sense, and it also alludes to a tribe. So he puts authority in different tribes. Every tribe has a different responsibility and authority. Yeah. And it's not a ruling. It doesn't really, it's not used in the idea of ruling.
So it's like Judah and Tamar, have I got that right? Where he had given his, her husband, he'd given a son to her, and the husband had died, and he promised his younger son, but then, actually his first two sons had died. He promised his younger son, wasn't giving her the younger son, so she sat by the road, he slept with her, and she took his staff as a sign that he would, pay her back the way he was supposed to. He'd give her the payment, and so, but it wasn't, it was just his, hi, I'm a leader of the house of Judah, I have a staff. And
Right.
it shows that I am, I have a signet or whatever, and it shows that I have a seal. So I am the leader of the house of Judah.
Right. Yeah.
It's that kind of
That kind of a staff. Right. So that's what the staff represents. But what is an almond? The almond is so cool. So the almond in the Hebrew that is shaked. It means an almond or an almond tree. It's only used 4 times in Hebrew, in the Torah. Yeah, and in fact the whole Bible's that particular word shaked. And it comes from the word shakad, means to watch or to wake. It's like being awake and watchful. So the almond tree, you're supposed to be watchful and awake and know the time of coming. Of the coming of what? we always think of the coming, okay, we have to be watchful for the coming of Messiah.
Uh-huh.
But I think that God wants us to watch for other things as well, and especially for the almond tree. So we're going to look to see what the almond tree represents, right? And also, I'm going to say only used 4 times. It represents the authority of the Aaronic priesthood, because that's Aaron's rod sprouted. It represents his authority, right? Jeremiah 1:11 says, "The word of the Lord came to me saying, 'What do you see, Jeremiah?' And I said, 'I see a rod of an almond tree, a shaked.' Then the Lord said to me, 'You have been seen well, for I am watching over shakad, my word to perform it.'" So God, he plays this little word play there.
Mm-hmm.
But in Jeremiah 11, that's like an end of days kind of thing. Jeremiah, the beginning of Jeremiah, we're going to kind of look at this. If the rod of Aaron is the sign of the priesthood, and Jeremiah said, "What do you watch for this?" We're supposed to be watching for the sign of the priesthood, for the almond tree. Not just for Messiah. There's other things we need to watch for. In Jeremiah 1:11, the very next event is the boiling pot of the north. Let's go there really quick.
Just so you know, we're a half hour into it again.
Okay, we'll go fast. Jeremiah 1. So, he's anointed Jeremiah as a prophet to the nations. Let's see. We just read that he said, "I'm watching to fulfill my word." Verse 13. "A second time the word of Adonai came to me asking, 'What do you see?' I answered, 'I see a cauldron tilted away from the north over a fire fanned by the wind.'" Excuse me. "Then Adonai said to me, 'From the north, calamity will boil over into everyone living in the land, because I will summon all the families in the kingdoms of the north,' said Adonai." So the whole idea of a boiling cauldron in the north, if you go on and read more in the prophets, it's like God gathers all the enemies of Israel in the north. There's the whirlwind of the north. There's a gathering from the north. There's Gog and Magog from the north. So the north, there's the
Syria
side
from
of
the
war.
north.
Syria's there. What's going on right there right now?
Mm-hmm.
It's this boiling cauldron in the north.
Mm-hmm.
So we know the second event is the boiling cauldron that's about to attack. But just before that, we look for the rod, okay? Trees represent people. So for example, a fig tree represents the leadership of Israel. It represents kingship and the leadership in the temple. So all the leaders in both the kingship and in the temples, like the authority figures, okay? The almond represents the priesthood, the Aaronic priesthood. So if you see something about an almond tree, it has to do with a priesthood. Yeah. The olive tree represents the 2 houses of Israel. Mm-hmm. And then the vine usually has implications of spiritual condition, the idea of a messianic kingdom, everybody sitting under their vine tree, right? So that's what these trees mean, and these different symbolism. Both animals and plants have symbolism, extreme symbolism, but the tree is really important. It always has to do with some type of leadership. Now, I'm going to take us to something that's coming up in September, which I've talked about before. It's the sign of the woman in the heaven. Remember, September 23rd this year, there's going to be a conjunction of constellations, and it sounds like the one in Revelation 12, where there's the Virgin, there's Virgo, and there's the crown of 12 stars over her head, and it's because there's a constellation that includes, it's the constellation Leo, with Mercury, Mars, Venus, and Regulus over her head. So that would be a crown of stars. The sun is on her shoulder and the moon is under her feet. Now this constellation happens every year, right around the time of Sukkot, in the fall feasts, regularly, but not with the same planets and conjunctions. A lot of people are saying this is the same type of conjunction that happened when Messiah was born, back in 3 BC. It's similar, but not exactly the same. The thing that I thought was interesting was that Virgo at this time is in her womb. Virgo. Now a lot of people, I'm sorry, not Jupiter. Jupiter's in her womb. Jupiter has been in her womb since November of 2016, I believe. And Jupiter's went in the womb, came out for a little bit, went back in, and is staying there for 9 months.
Oh.
And then begins to travel down Virgo, kind of out the birth canal, and then exits next November.
Oh.
Okay? Interesting thing. It's almost like she's giving birth to Jupiter.
Uh-huh.
Now, Jupiter in a Greek thought is the king planet. And so everybody thinks, oh, that's King Jesus. A lot of people are saying, oh, it's the rapture of the church. So there's a lot of speculation.
Oh, okay.
I'm not saying the sign means anything, but if it does, in Hebrew teaching, as far as the planets, the mazazot, it's the Zadik planet. Jupiter is the Zadik, or the righteous one. A Zadik would be a righteous person, a person who comes in the name of the Lord, brings righteousness to his people. Now you think of the Melchizedek, the Malach Zadik, the righteous king.
Right.
I suspect that this Jupiter or Zadik in the womb that's about to be birthed has something more to do with the temple than anything else. Either the establishment of the altar, the birth of the actual priesthood, and the beginning of the altar sacrifices. When this planet actually went into the womb was right around that time. This was last in 2016. Was when the Sanhedrin announced their high priest. They declared it had a high priest right around the same time that this planet went into the womb. So I started thinking there might be a connection there. Okay?
So pulling this all back together again is what we're talking about. We've been talking about Levi. We've been talking about Aaron. We've been talking about how they have been given a particular responsibility. We've been talking about the almond tree. And then we went to Jeremiah and we talked about the almond tree. And this is talking about potential in current day sign for the fact that maybe the priesthood is being reborn, and the temple is being reconstructed, and we're
In some form.
In some form. Remember, we don't have a timeline, but we watch order of events. And so is it possible that we are on the cusp of new Levitical priesthood and temple being rebuilt on the mount?
Right. Now, most people use Isaiah 7:14 as the verse for that sign. And that's, I'm going to read it to you. Instead of going to it, I'm going to go ahead and read it to you. Isaiah 7:14 through 17. Therefore the Lord himself will give you a sign. Behold, a virgin will be with child and bear a son, and she will call his name Emmanuel. He will eat curds and honey at the time he knows enough to refuse evil and choose good. For before the boy will know enough to refuse evil and choose good, the land whose two kings you dread will be forsaken. Now, as believers, we've always just taken that one part, a virgin will be a child and bear a son and call his name Emmanuel. We said, oh, that's Jesus. But Jesus didn't eat curds and whey, or curds and honey. John the Baptist did. And John the Baptist was born right around the same time during that sign.
And John the
6 months
Baptist
earlier.
was who?
John the Baptist was the Levitical, or the legitimate heir to the Aaronic priesthood. He was supposed to be the next high priest.
He was supposed to be the high priest. You know, at that time, they just picked up when they were Roman appointees, but John the Baptist was the real deal. He was the legal real deal.
Now,
But my question is, it says, behold, a virgin will be with child. Was Elizabeth a virgin?
Elizabeth was not a virgin.
No.
But if this actually does allude to us, the sign of the Virgo in the heavens,
I see.
yeah. Virgo in the heavens at that time gave birth to both John the Baptist and Jesus.
Okay, I see.
So it could be both,
Okay.
right?
Okay,
And
so
we
you're
never look at-
talking about Virgo, you're not really talking about what we think of as a virgin.
Right.
Okay.
And so that's a real important point, because as Christians, it's valuable info that we piled into our heads for years, but that's a real good point, is that's how we always look at it, the virgin. But, and again, check it out, but our study has shown that we're talking about Virgo, not Mary.
Yeah, see,
Yeah.
and that just brings a whole different perspective to it completely.
It does.
From what we've,
Now, this is where we get to Hebrew thought.
yeah.
Was it Jesus that was born, or was it John that was born? Yes. It was both.
Yes.
And it alludes to both. Now let's look at John the Baptist and who he was. Now think of John the Baptist as representing the legal priesthood. He was legally in line to become the high priest. That's why he had to baptize Yeshua.
Right.
He was the only one, because he was the only one who could. So his name is Yochanan, which means Yah is gracious, or Yah is inclined towards us. It means Yah, it's a combination of Yah, as in Yahweh, and Chanan, which means to be inclined towards, to bend or stoop in kindness to an inferior, to favor, bestow, causatively to implore, to move by petition or beseech. So it's the idea of beseeching down and inclining, being gracious towards. Now, this says that she'll call his name Emmanuel. Emmanuel means God is accompanying us, God is with us, God is beside us. You can kind of connect the two. That God is with us, inclined towards us, gracious towards us. So you can connect Yochanan's name to Emmanuel in the Hebrew.
Right. Because
They have similar thoughts.
Right, yeah. And he's beside Yeshua.
He's beside Yeshua. And he was the forerunner for Yeshua. They ministered at the same time. So I'm wondering now, if this sign in the heaven in September means anything, it means it has something to do with the priesthood, the birth of the forerunner to Messiah, because Elijah is supposed to come back again as a forerunner to the Messiah. And Yochanan or John was a type of Elijah.
Okay, so this is how this goes. Here's just a thought that popped into my head, but this is how Midrash works. So, you got John the Baptist, who's representing, in this evening, John the Baptist will play Levi. Yeshua will play Judah. And does that mean that we've been talking about the wind, we've been talking about folks, we were talking about everybody being brought in, about being brought back to the land, and do we have, and at this point it's talking about Levi, Judah, and then Ephraim, because it's all, we've been talking about that, all coming back together again in the land. So what it is, it's bringing the original plan back together again, where we've got Levi, Judah, and Ephraim come back together.
Right, and we're talking about signs in the heaven? Yeah. So, that's how we kind of tie all this together.
An alternative to Jesus coming back is possibility of the God kingdom, of God's original plan coming back together again and continued movement toward the land.
As always, we're not going to know until it happens.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, and then we'll go, oh!
Yeah, but it's so fun to have your mind open to some different possibilities and things that make sense, and you go, oh yes, that makes sense.
Never thought of that before.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, Jesus is Lord. Yeshua is Yeshua.
Woohoo.
This is not a salvation
Issue.
issue. It's just we're trying to understand, be smart, be wise, have our eyes open, see how it works.
Well, to sum up what we learned today, number one, we learned about the danger of encroachment. We learned how God actually structures levels of Kedusha, or holiness, responsibilities. We learned about the tie-in between the earthquake of Korah, the earthquake of Revelation, and the earthquake of Zechariah, which is they all are connected. The possibility that the Mount of Olives will split as the beginning of the end of days. And then we also now have looked at the Aaron's rod who budded, and the sign in the heaven in September that could possibly be telling us about the coming of the Tzaddik, of the Elijah, the spirit of Elijah, that comes in the last day as a forerunner of Yeshua. I hope you enjoyed this type of midrash today for our Torah portion, and come back again and learn more about the Bible, the end of days, and what's happening in our world at Coffee with My Friends. Till then, Shalom.